Well, it's been a while, but it's a great pleasure to have one of my favourite podcasts back in Inclusion Talks. And Cindy McDougall is my co-host. And we thought before we started chatting to our guests, of which Cindy has worked meticulously and as usual very, very hard in being able to attract all the guests because she's got such a great reputation and name in the all inclusion space, particularly with Little Athletics in the southwestern part of the state and in Western Victoria. I thought we'd have a bit of a chat about what we've got in store and what she's been up to. Cindy, welcome. Great to have you back. And we're looking forward to what you've got in store for us in 2025. And I also thought at the very end, we would talk about one of your other favourite topics, the mighty West Coast Eagles. But we'll get to that a bit later.
No, it is great to be back, Dan, for our second season. It has been a little bit of a gap between chats, and that's been a bit disappointing. But look, life got a little bit in the way, and some health issues got a bit in the way. But it is absolutely fantastic to be back behind the microphone.
Now, I know you're a pretty open person in regard to your health, and I really feel for you with your health, and it's been tough, and we know that your children have got their own issues, obviously being on the spectrum. You've been very open about that. That's why you're heavily involved in the All Abilities sporting program, and you do a fantastic job. But your own health, idiopathic facial pain syndrome and trigeminal neuralgia. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that. I'm sure I haven't pronounced
so
that properly. It's something I've never heard of before.
it is definitely something, and I'm not even sure that I pronounce it correctly, to be quite honest, but idiopathic facial pain syndrome and trigeminal neuralgia.
Yeah.
So back in November, about when we were finishing up recording, I was at an athletics event and possibly initially thought I'd got a little bit dehydrated, but went to leave the event and half of my face was numb, and my partner said that my face had actually dropped. So half of my face had a form of Bell's palsy, and one eye was lower than the other. My lip had dropped, and I put it down to exhaustion and maybe a little bit of dehydration. So refused to go to the hospital, and
Of
the next
course.
morning woke up and it was the same. So I still couldn't feel the right side of my face. And my partner said, no, look, the kids were pretty concerned and he was very concerned. And so I headed off to my local doctor and he went, you could be having a stroke. Off you go to hospital. So didn't have anyone with me. So I raced home, jumped in the car, changed my clothes, jumped in the car, packed a bit of a bag, charger in the car, as we all need nowadays in this technologically crazy world, and headed off to the local hospital, the Southwest Healthcare in Warrnambool, and MRIs, and got home about 10 hours later, being told that if I was in pain when I chew, I needed to go back to the hospital. So that started a little bit of a journey that I guess finally gave me a little bit of closure a month ago today, actually, where it was explained that one side of my face has the idiopathic facial pain and the other side is likely trigeminal neuralgia. So little bit of a journey in the last 5 months, that's for sure.
So what does that mean? And is there a cure for it? Because to be honest, I've never heard of it before.
So I'm still learning a lot about it, to be quite honest. The trigeminal neuralgia will cause varying amounts of sharp, really horrifically painful stabbing pains to the side of my face. They can stick around for about 2 or 3 minutes and then disappear. But I get a lot of residual pressure and just, I guess, an off feeling for quite a while afterwards. The idiopathic facial pain is where I will have what is similar to a migraine headache, and that's on my left side of my face, and it will affect my jaw, my eye, my nose, and it can actually get that severe that I actually slur my words and it's really hard to understand. So, and the pain in itself can be that severe that I will be left crying in bed for quite a few hours. So trigeminal neuralgia has a name which I won't pop on here because it is a trigger warning, but it leads to more cases of self-harm than any other disorder in America because the pain tends to become more prevalent and more often as the disorder progresses. But, it's generally dealt with medications that target neuropathy pain, or anti-anxiety medications. So it helps relax the muscles and the nerves. I've chosen to go down a natural path to start with, and because I have extreme medication allergies, and I've actually found a little bit of a sweet spot. It gives me extreme dizziness at times, but I've actually found one natural medication that is working for me at the moment. So it gave me the confidence to come back on and start up the podcast again, which has been really great, because it does knock your confidence, and it does knock your belief in your abilities a fair bit.
The doctors told you, and those that know you that would be listening to this, you are an incredibly busy person. You're an energetic person. I don't think you believe in rest except when it's required in the middle of the night. Not sure how much rest you get in the middle of the night anyway. I'm not privy to that. I don't need to know that. But you, I think, do way too much. But that's just your giving nature. Have you been told to maybe slow down a bit, Cindy? I've certainly told
Oh,
you,
look,
but you don't listen to me, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, look, I don't listen to probably nearly anybody, but it is definitely exacerbated by stress. So,
Yes.
and I do find I get a lot more of the pain if I'm stressed. But it can be triggered by eating. It can be triggered by brushing my teeth, brushing my hair, putting on makeup. It's really random with how it will strike. Yeah, look, it's forced me to slow down. So when it strikes, I can't talk. I struggle to be able to do things. The pain actually affects me that much that I've spent a lot of time in the last 6 months in bed or in the chair, and I've learnt that that is okay, and it's really important. When I have really big weeks, I will try to schedule appointments and schedule things with a day's break, so that that day in between is literally spent in the chair watching the television or lying down, which I'm not a television watcher, so that's been hard in itself, other than my football. But I know I just have to, or I don't function properly, or I'm in an extreme amount of pain. I don't drive a lot now, so I tend not to drive if I can help it. Funnily enough, though, I actually feel better when I do drive than what I do when I'm a passenger. So, but just to make sure that I'm not putting that pressure on my body. So no, I am actually still very heavily involved with a lot of committees, but I've actually stepped back from a few of those and stepped back in a lot of my roles. Still trying to keep my passion for para athletics and developing para sport, because I think it's too important, and it is very much a part of me and my children. So, but a lot of the little incidental stuff I've actually given up. So I am, would you believe it, slowing down.
I'm delighted to hear that, because health needs to come first. Now, we've got a lot of guests coming up. The first one, we're looking forward to that. He's a seven-time Paralympian medalist. He's won a couple of gold medals in the T53 class. We're talking on the track in Richard Coleman. So we look forward to that. And we've got some other great guests as well, heavily involved, of course, in the all-ability sport space.
Yeah, so we've got a really great scope from grassroots up to elite again in the upcoming season. We'll be welcoming at least two, if not three or four Paralympic medalists and Paralympic representatives, not just through athletics, wheelchair basketball, and quite a few other sports. So really keen on that, because I love learning about all other para sports, and the best way to learn is by listening to the stories of the people, behind the athletes. So very keen to learn about those. I've got some younger participants who are, I guess, beginning their journey and blazing a trail for those that are coming in front of them. One of those will be part of a new classification, which my children are a part of as well, but she is definitely blazing a trail and trying to open up pathways for athletes to get to experience sport, which I'm really keen to speak to her, and also some administrators. So it'll be quite interesting to listen to the varied stories.
What's the new classification?
So the new classification is the ASD classification, and Swimming Victoria and Triathlon Australia have already brought it in, which is the S19 classification, and that's for athletes with autism or athletes on the spectrum. So athletics is lagging behind swimming and triathlon in that they actually only have it as an exhibition invitational event at the moment. SSV, so School Sports Victoria, have got it in. So my children are actually off to state champs for that, for swimming in about 3 weeks. 2 of my children have qualified for that. So they're heading through to that. And I know Liz Gosper, who we had on the first series, she's had some incredible successes in the last few weeks with her S19 athletes at some up to world level triathlon events. So they are really proactive. And yeah, we're just hoping to build a bit of a profile. And we've got some great young athletes that are trying to blaze that trail for those that will come after them and indeed for themselves, to see it grow. So we have Virtus Championships coming up later in the year. We've got some based in Bangkok, and we've got some based in Queensland. So there's swimming, I think, is Bangkok, and athletics is in Brisbane. So they will be pioneering and promoting events in the S19 scope, I guess. So that will be awesome. We've also got some national AS coming up this week. The juniors start tomorrow over in Perth for athletics, and the seniors, which my elder daughter's competing in, next week over there. And then we've got the national swimming champs in about 2 weeks. I think they are in Sydney, but I could be very wrong about that. They might be Brisbane. Actually, I think it's Brisbane. And then, yeah, we've got some world champs in India coming up for athletics as well. So it's a bit of a halcyon time at the moment of events for para athletes. And I hope to see some new representation and some young up and coming stars that maybe one day will hopefully come on the podcast and join us, Dan.
That'd be fantastic. Now, of course, KISS Professional Solutions will be our sponsor. They're the largest independent provider of copiers and printers in Victoria. Whatever your office technology needs may be, they're here to provide sound advice, competitive pricing and unparalleled customer support. And they're based in Carrum Downs in southeast Melbourne. They take pride in going the extra mile for their customers, aiming to retain them for life. And if they're a large or small business and you're based in Melbourne, Sydney, Gippsland, Shepparton and Albury deal with customers in Wagga, they offer business phone systems, NBN services, CCTV and security systems, and you can get them on www.kissps.com.au. So great to have John McEncrow and the crew on board for Inclusion Talks. And we're here with Cindy McDougall, the co-host. She's actually the boss of the program. I just do what I'm told. Just having a bit of a chat as we preview the next lot of interviews, and Richard Coleman will be our first guest on the show very shortly. Of course, he is a 4-time Paralympian, 7-time Paralympian medalist. He's a multiple world champion representative, and also won a couple of gold medals in the world champs and a Commonwealth Games bronze medal, predominantly in the T54 class for one of the events at the Commonwealth Games in the 1500 metres, where they combined the two categories. Now, Cindy, coverage of Paralympics, you happy with it? I'll go back to the other night. It was good that it was on free-to-air television. We know that it's very different the way that Channel 7 are doing the football this year because of Thursday night footy, and they're not really doing Saturday night. And we know that Fox are doing all matches now, so all games are catered for. So Channel 7 were able to do the Murray plant meet, which was wonderful. But everyone was talking about Gout. He didn't quite get the job done. Young Kennedy beat him. But was there enough coverage on all the other events, including the Paras?
Yeah, look, Paralympics, I think the coverage was absolutely exceptional, and it was great to see the scope of the coverage and really giving people the opportunity to be involved in, not just the track events, but the field events and swimming and all of the other events. It really was fantastic to see the level of media inclusion in their coverages. So was thrilled to watch some of that. The Murray plant meet was, I guess a little bit disappointing. And there's been some great commentary from Jared Clifford, who is a Paralympian, but also competed to an incredibly high level, able-bodied as well. And Rhiannon Clark, who's a personal friend of my family and a Paralympian. And they both were very disappointed, and I wholeheartedly agree with the fact that the para-athletic events were actually scheduled before the TV coverage was planned to start. So TV coverage started at 7 o'clock, but the para events were around 5:45, 5:50. So we really missed a fantastic opportunity to build awareness, recognition, and support our grassroots to elite, because there's a great little athlete, Kira Wright. She's a family friend from many years ago, and it was her first high level event. And she was competing with, multiple time Paralympians. So it would have been fantastic to, I guess, show the length and breadth of what is possible by having those in a primetime TV slot, even if it had have been that they pre-recorded them and slotted them into the coverage so that we got to see it. I think it was a really big missed opportunity, and it's been fantastic to see some of the higher level athletes voicing their disappointment, because I do believe that unless you do speak about it, like we do on the Inclusion Talks podcast, that sometimes it slips under the radar and we don't realize that, there are fantastic athletes and fantastic events and fantastic opportunities that we really should be showcasing to help build the future. Our Paralympians are incredibly successful. Our para athletes are incredibly successful around the world. And I truly believe that the best way to go forward is by making it more visual and making it more understood and making it, I guess, more accepted. So, yeah, from a personal point of view, I was really disappointed. It was fantastic to see it in prime time. It was fantastic that, I'm not sure, I think it was Bruce McAvaney, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, it was.
May not have been.
Yeah, it was.
Referring,
they're an outstanding commentary team, two of the best together.
Well, I don't know if it was them or it may have been Shervo. It was one of them that actually referred to it as field and track. And as a parent of, I have a track star, but my daughter actually won a world championship in the field, and two of my other daughters made national in field. So it was fantastic to hear it referred to as field and track, because I think sometimes the field is seen as the quiet little sibling of the track events. So it gave me a little bit of a cheeky smile, that's for sure.
Can I ask you a question just in regard to being a mother of athletes? Just your view, and you're also obviously a broadcaster as well, and track and field is your sport. Too much pressure on Gart?
Yeah, look, I think I understand the public's want for the information, and let's be real, that event would not have drawn 8,000 plus people if Gart had not been there.
Yeah.
So while I understand there is a hunger to promote him and have him as the center of attention, I do worry about the impact that sort of pressure, and possibly it did show the other night with Kennedy, and I'm not going to take away from Kennedy's run because it was incredible, and I have sort of silently followed Kennedy over the last few years and had hoped that one day he would get the recognition that he deserves for the effort that he's put in.
How good is he? How good is he, Cindy? You know him better than I do. How good is he?
Look, I've never met him, but looking at his events, he is one heck of a talent. And, I think in Australia, we are so blessed at the moment to have the depth of talent that we do, both in able-bodied and para. But I do think that we need to be mindful that we do have some unbelievably good talent that we do not want to see get broken or maybe not be able to achieve what they are capable of achieving because of external pressures. So, I guess I've been lucky to be in the inner sanctum of elite sport and grassroots sport, and I've seen the mental health. And look, we're going to have Dana Crease on, who is a Paralympian, a bronze medalist at the Paralympics, and she has been very open about her mental health struggles. So I guess I've had that perspective of seeing what the pressures of sport can do, what outside pressures can do. And I am very mindful that the Murray Plant Meet coverage was fantastic, but even for someone like Peter Boll, who has come back from incredible adversity, it wasn't really about him. It was about Gout. And, on the screen, it had 18 minutes till Gout. And every event, even the women's, was about Gout. And I think it's a shame that we are taking away from the incredible efforts of our other athletes in Australia of both sexes, of all different disciplines. While I understand we need it for the media and for, I guess, generating the hype around our events. I really would like to see it be more balanced, but that's just my personal opinion.
But I think the media are also the major problem with it, not Bruce. If you were to talk to Bruce, and as you know, he's a hero of mine, and at 71, he still has this love of, and you and I have discussed this about, if you're going to be a good broadcaster, you've got to prepare and know your stuff and do your stats. And his preparation is second to none, and he hires people to help him as well because he does so much. And he's still got the passion to do that. If you lose the passion to do that, I think that's when you give it up. And I'll be honest to say, Glenn Mitchell, a good mate of mine, you know quite well too, from the ABC, has retired because he didn't want to do the prep anymore. And that's fair enough, because he said, I'm not doing it unless I can do the prep. Now, Bruce would have done a lot of work on Gart. He would have done a lot of work on Kennedy. But any event he would have done, he would have promoted it to the hilt. It's not him. It's other members of the media that, because we've got this kid we think is going to be the next superstar, there's enormous pressure on him. And I agree with you with the mental health aspect. He's just 17. They're talking about Harley Reid from your football club, West Coast, which we'll get to in a minute. He's only 19. Enormous pressure. Don't put too much pressure on them. Let them have their journey and see how they go. Now, I hope that people, it's been a different sort of week, hasn't it, in regard to people talking about Gout. They're not saying, oh, it was a failure. Another 5 minutes, another 5 metres, he probably wins that race, but he didn't. And well done to Kennedy, full credit. But having said that, they're sort of not putting the narrative out now that he was unbeatable, that he might win every race he's in, which was the impression I got before the 200 metres on the weekend.
And look, I think that'll probably be a good thing for him. And I think probably, as horrible as this is probably going to sound, I think it is the greatest motivator to be beaten. I think when you have incredible talent, incredible ability to do well, you become, and I'm not speaking about Gout, I'm speaking in general, when you become used to winning, I think sometimes, and I've seen it in junior sport a lot, that sometimes that defeat, which I hate that word, I prefer being beaten in a race, can sometimes be a little bit of a pressure valve release, and it can give you the chance to step back and go, okay, this is what I need to work on. I'm not unbeatable. This is good. They're not going to be looking at me as closely as what they are. I can do this myself, and I don't need all this hoo-ha around me. I do think the media's got a lot of responsibility around the way that they market things. And don't get me wrong, I love the media. I've had a loving relationship with the media since I was 7 years old and said I wanted to become a journalist. So correct. For me, you know, the media is amazing. But I do think that they have a responsibility to consider the impacts of the pressures that are put on all different sports, all different everythings, to be honest. I think as a journalist, sometimes getting the story is more important than supporting the person behind that story. So, you know, look, I was really disappointed about Kennedy not getting what he deserved. You know, he pulled out an incredible race of, you know, becoming the third fastest male in Australia. And none of that was really promoted, and none of that was given, I think, the credence that it deserved, because that kid did, and he is a man, but, you know, to me, he's a kid. I still remember him when he first started.
Everyone's a kid to me, Cindy. Everyone's a kid to me. Yeah.
Well, I just can't believe that, you know, he's put in that incredible effort. He's pulled it out on such an incredibly high-pressured event and high-pressured stage. And I think some of the accolades that he probably deserved weren't there. And I think that's the disappointing part in all of it, because he's probably worked just as hard as Gout has, and, you know, is an incredible bloke with an incredible work ethic, and hasn't, in my eyes, and it is only my personal opinion, maybe hasn't been given the accolades that he deserves. So I'm hoping it will change the narrative a little bit for everyone in light of what the Murray Plant event was, and, you know, especially around the para stuff, because I'd love to see a day where the paras are running with the able-bodieds. And I know when we have Richard on, that's something that he's really passionate about as well.
He certainly is. He'll be our first guest on Inclusion Talks. We're just previewing the new season. with Cindy McDougall, the co-host and the organiser of Inclusion Talks for KISS Professional Solutions. You can get them on their website, www.kissps.com.au, the largest independent provider of copiers and printers in Victoria. A couple more questions. Your daughters are very successful. You're very proud of them. Tell us about what they're doing at the moment. You mentioned some swimming championships in the new category, and I'm delighted that that's in, considering my mental health issues. And for a little while there, I was sort of diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and I still wouldn't be surprised if I am, even though because I can't find my car keys, but can tell you about miscellaneous sporting stats, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But tell us how your daughters are travelling.
Yeah, so it's up and down, and it can be interesting. As any parent with a child on the autism spectrum can attest to, you can have really great days and you can have really interesting days. So at the moment, I have Caitlin, who is still competing in parasport, but only 5 weeks ago had major abdominal surgery. She has endometriosis, and that has been a struggle that she's had. She was diagnosed at 13, but had
Oh,
had that probably since about 10 years old. So about 5 weeks ago, she had major surgery to remove quite an extensive amount of endometriosis, had a twisted fallopian tube and some cysts. So pretty major surgery 5 weeks out from a national championship, and has just officially started training again today. So she's actually off to nationals next Wednesday, and will be doing the para long jump with 11 other para athletes, and has an incredible field of start list that I think will be great experience. I'm hopeful she can do well, but I'm also hoping that it's more that she can get through it and be well. So that's been a journey in itself, and she's quite strong about talking about endometriosis and the effects that has on her training and on her mental health. And yeah, and she's actually just moved away from regional to city so that she can train 5 days a week now, because of course, when you're at that level, you have to train. And when you're traveling 600 kilometers a round trip 4 times a week to go and train, it not only becomes costly, as we will also talk about with Richard Coleman in
yeah.
a few weeks' time, but it's very taxing on your body, and it's a lot of time to be sitting down in a car. So she's actually made the move and decided that this is something she really does want to I guess give her heart fully to. And so that's been her journey. My two younger ones they've gone through the school pathway at the moment, because School Sports Victoria offer the new classification, and they qualified last week. We drove up to Horsham last week, and they qualified through, which for our listeners, Horsham is about 230 kilometres one way from where we live. So bit of a big day for them.
Is it that
But
far?
both of my,
Is it that far from
yeah,
Toronto? Because it's
certainly is.
280 from, I mean, I lived in Horsham for a while, as you know. It's 280 from Melbourne.
Yeah.
I find the last 55 k's the most boring drive from Stawell to Horsham. It is the most, if you're tired,
Oh, look, I love it.
all over. It's a horror.
Yeah, look, the kids do not enjoy it. And as I've said, being on the spectrum, it can be very, very interesting. Generally, it is the trip up that is harder than the trip home, because they have medals around their neck, which is always a great thing, because
Of course it
it
is.
makes them happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's definitely a big day, but they've qualified through to Melbourne. And look, Jackenzie's actually, so Jackenzie is my 12-year-old, and she's just starting her swimming journey. She's only probably swum a 50-meter pool 10 or 11 times. And she went to the All Countries last week in the multi-class and came home with 2 medals. So, and only missed a national qualifier for the Virtus Championships by about 0.4 of a second. So she's probably switched her mind a little bit away from athletics and into swimming. So possibly a new journey there. I'm not sure about that. But look, it's something where the opportunities are there. So athletics, she doesn't have the opportunity. She would be competing as an invitational for those events through athletics, whereas with swimming, she is regarded the same as her other multi-class participants. So we'll see how that goes. It's all about the experience. It's all about coping with the big crowds and the big noises and the big
Right.
trips. And, it's just the journey.
Certainly is. Now, talking of a journey, before I let you go, your other passion in life, and I still don't understand it, girl from Western Victoria, follows the West Coast Eagles, the enemy when I was growing up. They're always having success. It's been a pretty tough last 4 or 5 years. You love them. You go down and watch them. I mean, you are as passionate a West Coast Eagles supporter. I reckon if I was over in Perth and I went up to 10 West Coast Eagles supporters, I still reckon Cindy McDougall will be the most passionate West Coast Eagles supporter I know. And they do love them over there. How do you reckon they're
Yeah, look,
travelling? How do you reckon they're travelling? And Oscar Allen, did he do the wrong thing? And do you think you've lost him?
look, starting from the start, born and bred in the middle of Melbourne.
Yeah,
Yes, very passionate West Coast Eagles supporter, and I will thank Geelong supporters for building that passion for me. Richard Coleman, who is coming on, is very much a passionate Geelong, not so much football, but Geelong the place
yeah,
fan.
yeah.
I will credit them with, I guess, supporting my obsession and building my obsession. Look, we're not traveling great. We have a new coach, and the actual club itself is incredible. And just on our inclusion stuff, there's been some new inclusion stuff happening in the last few weeks, which has been incredible. They are incredibly inclusive, which I absolutely love, and definitely builds my passion for them a little bit more. But look, the girls are building beautifully. We've got Daisy Pearce, and I'm
Ripper.
part of the cheer squad for both, so luckily get to interact with both of them. The boys have a heck of a journey ahead of them, and look, they probably cop a lot more in the media. Again, we talk about media. They cop a lot more in the media than they probably deserve, and it puts a lot of pressure on them. But I guess, you get to that level, and you have to expect that's the case. Oscar Allen, look, I think it was probably misguided, but I also think that the hoopla around it has been huge. So, look, he is the captain. They're going through, or co-captain, with, of course, the Balan boy, Liam Duggan.
Correct.
But yeah, look, probably a little bit of misadventure and not the greatest timing. Look, I hope he will stay. I think I've probably been a little bit jaded because I was a really big Tom Barras fan, and
Yeah.
he actually said to me that he wasn't leaving, and then he left. So I think I'm a little bit jaded
He
in
was always leaving,
maybe.
Cindy. You know that. He was always leaving.
And look, I don't know about Oscar. I hope he will stay, but realistically, I'm a passionate fan, and I know that my team is at the bottom of the ladder. So, if you've got the opportunity for success, I don't know, or even being a passionate fan, I don't know that you could begrudge anybody wanting to follow success, because ultimately, when you begin a sport and you become good at a sport, that is what it's about. You can say it's all about the team, but it's not. It's about the successes that you chase. So, I'm probably a little bit different of a fan that while it bites and it hurts and I wish they wouldn't go, there's also a really great part of me that loves to see them succeed. Seeing Jack Darling and having Andrew Gaff cheer him off the ground for his 300th game, it was really hard seeing him in those colours, but it was also awesome to see that he got to experience that and have that success. So, I think it's the same with any sport, para, able, elite, grassroots. I think it's about being able to get the best out of the sport and having the best experience that you can have.
And before I let you go, we spoke about Gauk out and the pressure on him. The WA media's got a lot to answer for with Harley Reid, haven't they? I mean, there was that ridiculous cover last year where they had nothing because they had Harley wasn't playing. There was something on him every single week, and you can see why he's jaded, to use your phrase, which is a good one, and is looking to come back, because back here they'd still be chasing him. You've got to remember there's over 2,000 accredited journalists that cover the AFL. 2,000, Cindy, way too many.
Yep.
There is,
Yep.
because there's so many platforms to cover it. But I mean, Harley is obviously jaded. I think you're going to lose him, and I think the media has played a big part in it.
Look, I'm of the belief that I reckon he will stay. I'm hoping he will stay. But again, it's that thing that there are unbelievable pressures. And this is a young man who has moved halfway across the country to do the sport that he loves and is being pretty much hounded every day, not giving him the best. And I mean, anyone can say that they turn off social media. Anyone can say that they don't listen to the TV, but it still impacts you. As Oscar said today, it's that second hand, that third hand information. You still hear it. You still see it. It still impacts you. And I think again, if he does leave, which again, I hope he doesn't, I've spoken to him quite a few times, find him to be a great bloke. I wouldn't necessarily blame him because I do think, the Prince of Perth curse can be quite a heavy one.
Well, he's not. I mean, to call him the Prince of Perth, and then when he does leave, as you saw with Adam Simpson, and you may see with Andrew McWalter, they're Eastern Staters. We'll get stuck into them. That journo that got into Adam Simpson had enough and actually named him at the press conference. Had every right to. And the guy was going to sue him. I was thinking, no, mate, don't go down that path. You've opened the can of worms. You put your head on the chopping block. You're a journalist. You've been critical of him. He's had a crack. Let's move on.
Oh, look, I think it is human nature to look for the story, especially in journalism. Even when I was doing journalism years ago, I was told that if you don't get the story, you make it up. And it was part of the reason why I walked away for a long time. I think the story becomes more than the person. And I think the story can sometimes overshadow the more important facets of the damage that can be done, and even the positives. Like, as I said, this podcast was built to build positives around para sport, and then you see a lot of negatives, and it can sometimes be hard to turn that off. And you think, you hope that you can get a really good balance, and that the positive outweighs the negative, and that it doesn't cause damage, and it doesn't impact things that really it shouldn't be impacting. But, I just think it's the way of the world nowadays. I think that, as I have said, and we'll be talking again to Richard about this in a few weeks' time, that it's very important the way that you choose to live your life. And I think as journalists, just like sports people, sometimes it becomes like with sport becomes the biggest part of who you are. Same with journalism. It becomes more about who you are than who you actually are. And I think that's the hardest part about it.
I think that's what's affected me a bit, but you make a very good point there. But it's not about me. So we start soon. When are we starting? Obviously, we'll have our intro next week, and then Richard's after that. Is that right?
Yeah, look, I'm hoping to get us started about the first week of May. So we'd love to have this, our intro out in the next week or two. And then around the first week of May, start our podcast. And that'll give us a really great lead into those Virtus champs and the World Paras in India. And hopefully that'll give us a great build into some fantastic parasport opportunities that we can definitely capitalize on and get some of those incredible stories out there.
Very good. Well, Cindy, thanks so much. We look forward to it. Can't wait. As I say, Richard Coleman, our first guest, but we'll have our intro. It's been great having a chat. Great to see you so well and thriving as usual and keeping busy, which I couldn't imagine you doing anything else. You're one of the all-time greats, and it's going to be a pleasure working with you again to do Inclusion Talks, our podcast, thanks to KISS Professional Solutions.
I'd just love to thank KISS, and I'd also like to thank our listeners, because without them, para inclusion is a lot less important. So I love knowing that we are getting it out there to all the people who are our para sport supporters.
Thanks, Dan.